Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Today is a very special podcast because we have Dan Lactose from Spaz and, of course, other interesting projects. Thank you for coming on, Dan. It's a real pleasure.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Um, yeah, so sorry, I'm like a bit nervous because you are a giant in my eyes in the hardcore scene. But so
Oh, come on, man. I'm just a normal cat like you, man. We're just bullshitting about some music, you know. That's how I look at it. I'm lucky to be here. I'm really lucky that, people still care about Spaz and, stuff I did basically when I was in high school. You know what I mean? And
hmm.
and the fact that it's allowed me to continue creating and have people that follow me and
So we just didn't get that last bit you said.
oh yeah. So what I was saying was, I'm very grateful that people still care about Spaz. It's shocking to be honest. It's the band's more popular now than we were when we existed, which is nothing. None of us would have imagined that back then. And the fact that it's allowed, it's allowed an avenue for people to follow what I'm doing now. I'm very grateful for that, and I don't take that for granted at all. So appreciate being on the show. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, yeah. Likewise. One of the things I guess that's been interesting to me, um, well, that's a bad way of putting it, but a question that's been crossing my mind is how would you personally describe the music of Spaz?
It's hardcore. We never considered ourselves grindcore, even though we did have some blast beats occasionally. We never considered ourselves Powerviolence because back then that was a small group of bands. Capitalist Casualties, Man is the Bastard, Crossed Out, No Comment, all the Infest projects. That was their thing.
Mm.
If they called us Powerviolence, awesome. But we consider ourselves a hardcore band
Okay.
mainly. But just I guess just an extreme hardcore band, I guess.
Mm-mm-mm. So you didn't see yourself as a part of that whole group of those bands?
Not really. No, not really, because I felt like we kind of started when that was already underway and some of that was already winding down. So I
Mm.
kind of felt like we were kind of in between point, because when Capitalist Casualties, who were like our brothers up here in Northern California, when they really started releasing records and playing a lot more, and kind of getting more recognition, I guess. Like, Crossed Out had broken up, No Comment was done, Man is the Bastard was kind of starting to fizzle out. And so we were kind of like a bridge maybe between what was going to come next and what had come before us. I mean, Capitalists had been around for a long time. Don't get me wrong; they weren't like a new band like we were, but I felt like they had entered a new era of the band at that
Yeah,
point.
no, definitely.
And and yeah, then different things started happening. So I kind of I don't know. I just didn't want to like try to steal somebody else's thing. You know what I mean? Like I'm very much against biting, what we call biting. I come from a background doing graffiti, and graffiti's all about having original style.
Right, right.
And if you're copying somebody too closely, then we call you a biter. Well, there's a song called Biter on the first Spaz 7 inch,
That's right. That's right.
so that's where we were coming from.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's where we were coming from. So I didn't want to try to be, you when you're starting a band, like like say you're starting a band, you meet somebody and you're like, yeah, I'd love to do a band that sounds like Infest, Drop Dead meets whatever, whatever. And then you start actually writing music and playing it. It doesn't sound like that at all. Right. You
Mm.
know, they're kind of like reference points to jump off from. And I felt like that was kind of where we were. Am I breaking up?
No, no, you're good. You're good.
Am I coming through?
You're coming through. Yeah, everything's great.
Okay. Um, yeah. So yeah, I think more people, other people called us power violence more than we would refer to it. And I think when we would refer to it our, ourselves as power violence in a song or write a song about power violence, we were kind of more talking about that scene, you know,
Mm.
kind of as like guys who were jumping in and out. You know, obviously Chris Dodge was very involved in that scene for putting out all those records. But yeah, you know, it's weird because now people say, "Oh, I'm in a power violence band," you know, and I hear it and I'm like, "Well, I guess it kind of sounds more reminiscent of Spaz than any other band I would consider power violence." So at this point in time, you know, we're probably considered like a power violence band, but you know, I mean, people are, you know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. That's just my personal take on it. I didn't want to try to force myself into their group, you know, that they had already kind of established with that
Mm.
term.
Right. Interesting. So, but you were, f friendly with those groups, right? I mean, you did a lot of
Oh
um
yeah,
blitz, yeah, and so on.
played gigs, big fan. I mean, I was a huge fan of all of that stuff, and the fact that we got to play shows with them and do records with bands from that, you know, little scene was great, man. And that was mainly all through Chris. You know, Max had some connections with those guys
Mm.
prior. I used to write to Eric Wood. He was really the only person in that group that I was already in contact with
Oh, okay.
when we started Spaz. Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, and for everyone, Eric Wood is a member of Man is the Bastard. Um,
yeah.
and so what was your perception of how they perceived you as a band? Like, did they like take you in as like their own, or one of those things, or
I mean, I think at the time there was not a lot of music like that in the US. You know, a lot of if you were like in the late 80s, early 90s, if you were looking for like hyper speed hardcore or thrash, what a lot of people called it was mostly like in England, you know, or overseas. They were playing much faster, and without, like in America, it seemed like it like metal had kind of entered because, you know, especially in the Bay Area with thrash metal, you know, we were the thrash metal like capital. And to play super fast and heavy with no metal influence, I felt like, you know, overseas bands were doing it more. And there was a few bands in the US, you know, like Disrupt in Boston, and you know, I mean, there was a few small scene people that wrote to each other. Drop Dead, you know, I used to correspond with those guys. Um, but yeah, there was just not a lot of people. And when like a band would come through, and you know, the Bay Area back then was all about Lookout Records, man, and
mm,
kind of like the beginning of emo, right? So it was a lot of melodic, you know, quiet kind of music. There, it wasn't heavy, it wasn't fast. And so, you know, if a band like Psycho from Boston came through the Bay Area and played Gilman Street, well, Spaz and Capitalist were going to be on the bill because who else was going to play with them? You know, you weren't going to throw like, you know, the Winona Riders, you know, on that bill because it would be weird. It would just be too weird. You know, I'm
mm,
all for like diverse bills, but the scene in the Bay Area was different. So we were really lucky, and we got to play with a lot of amazing bands. Every time Man is the Bastard came up here, early before they kind of broke through the into like other scenes up here, who I think were more into them for their political views,
Right.
really. Um, at the time when they did the split with Mumia, they were starting to play a lot of different shows. They weren't playing like strictly hardcore shows. Um, but yeah, during the early 90s, there was not a lot of bands in the Bay Area that could open for a fast hardcore band that was passing through.
So the first split you did with Charles Bronson, um, uh, was there a story behind that? Because it's, I think a very unique split among, the different hardcore splits out there.
Yeah, so I mean, our tracks were kind of old tracks that we
Right.
had prior. And then so I actually met I became pen pals with Mark McCoy, the singer of Charles Bronson, when I was in my band before Spaz, which was called Sheep Squeeze.
Mm.
And he bought a Sheep Squeeze record, and in the singer of Sheep Squeeze was the first person I ever knew who had his own phone line, because he lived in a room in his garage that was his dad's former office. So he had his own phone number and his own answer machine. So, unbeknownst to him, when I did the layout for the first record, I put his phone number and I
Mm.
said, call the 24-hour Sheep Squeeze hotline or something like that. And Mark got the record and called that number.
Mm.
And Chris, I guess, said, "Oh, you should probably talk to Dan. Here's." And Chris was like, "Oh, well, you should probably talk to Dan." Gave Mark my parents' phone number. Mark called me there. We had a nice phone conversation. Then we just started. We were pen pals, And I was big into doing zines back then, and
Cool.
he was, I think, about to do a zine, and he wanted to do an interview with me, and that's kind of how our friendship started. And then he was, he started doing some music. Uh, and then at some point, he was telling me, and we were trading tapes, and I was taping him a lot of stuff, like records I was discovering. Um, I guess kind of like fast forwarding a bit to when I met Max. But this is like kind of pre-Spaz, early beginnings of Spaz, when me and Max are just like skating together and talking about this band we want to start.
Mm-mm.
And so I'm learning about all these cool, and I'm going to this really cool volunteer run record store in San Francisco called the Epicenter Zone, and just having access to all this music that I couldn't find before. I would just read about. So I started making mixtapes for Discoveries, and he was going crazy, like, really excited about the stuff, and it kind of inspired him, I guess, to start something a little more extreme, fast.
Mm-mm.
And so one day he sends me, this Charles Bronson demo tape, and I'm like, holy shit, man, this is fucking sick. So I started playing it for people, and I played it for Max, and Max was blown away. Um, and I think I think Mark and John stayed with me to just like visit.
Oh, sorry, who was
Um,
that? Mark and who?
and they met Max, Mark and John Aarons, the bass player from Charles Bronson. They
Mm-mm.
came out and stayed with me and hung out, and I, introduced them to Max, and just we just really got along. And they ended up coming back out to play at the Fiesta Grande, And I think once we all kind of linked up and met everybody and we were hanging out a bunch, um, that was actually when Max still drank and some of the guys in Charles Bronson drank. And so we were like hanging out at a hotel drinking and having a good time, and stuff. And I think
Mm,
it was probably Max's idea to do the split. Um, and I'm guessing they probably recorded for it, but I don't know why we chose those tracks. But yeah, that's kind of how it came about. It was just a bunch of friends talking about, hey, we should do this thing, and before we knew it, it was all put together and, came out. And um,
mm,
those guys kind of did all the art. It was one of the few releases that I was not really very involved in the artwork, like I did our insert page, but Mark and Aaron and Mike from Charles Bronson, they did a bunch of that artwork, and I think Mark too. I mean, all those guys. Mike Sutphin from Charles Bronson is like an amazing artist now. So those guys just graphically were just on some other level. Way beyond me and Max. In our cut and paste stuff. So they just went crazy. You know, with all the artwork and the variant covers and all that, and it's really cool, man. It's really cool. It's a cool record. It's a great snapshot of our friendship at that time.
mm, mm. Yeah, well, yeah, that's fascinating. Well, it's funny you brought up Max that you used to drink. I thought you guys were a straight edge band.
No, that's funny. Like the guy who brought us to Japan thought we were a straight edge band too, and then yeah, he was kind of disappointed. Max was straight edge at the time, but well, Chris never really drank. It's funny now that he writes like drinks like 500 beers a year or something, but yeah, I was always interested in the music, but I was never like a straight edge dude.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm drinking a beer right now, so.
'Cause you guys have a few songs referencing straight edge. Um, do you think those are just more so just references of like bands you enjoyed or?
I think so, but also like another thing about the Bay Area back in that 90s time is the people who were into the heavy fast hardcore, the straight edge dudes,
Mm-mm.
because that was the other side of that faster American hardcore thing. Straight edge bands were doing it. Those bands would probably not want to be on a bill with Man as the Bastard back then,
Mm-mm.
because they were kind of considered hippies.
Mm-mm.
but yeah, I mean, when Spaz would play, some of like all the straight edge dudes that we knew would come out and get in the pit and go crazy. There was a definite connection, just through the music, I think, and also maybe like just the DIY ethic of it all. And it was kind of a small scene back then. You know,
Yeah, right, right. Um, yeah, uh, so, so, when Charles Bronson became band, that was before Spaz?
no, I think Spaz already existed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they probably, because I'd have to look at like the timeline, but I'm pretty sure we already had like our first 7-inch out, maybe like the split with Floor,
Mm,
maybe even the first LP, or we had actually or we had recorded it. But I was tape trading with Mark, so every time we would finish a recording session, I would dub the whole session for him and send it to him.
mm,
You
mm,
know, so they were following along like in real time, and then those sessions would get all chopped up and sent out for all these splits and comps, and some would come out, some wouldn't, and some would come out 5 years later. So but their group knew all the stuff we were doing, like they were following us.
mm, mm. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, so I wanted to also I wanted to ask about um your first record, Dwarf Jester Rising. So was that or how did that come to be?
So we were contacted by that label, um, Clearview, which was formerly Selfless. I don't know if we might be the first release on Clearview, but he
Mm.
was doing Selfless before, and we knew of the label. He contacted us and asked if we want to do an LP. Kind of premature, I think, for us to agree to do it. Because if you're really paying attention, we re-recorded a lot of songs that we'd previously recorded. I think half of it was new songs, half of it was old songs.
Mm.
So
Yeah, you mean songs that were from previous singles and things.
yeah, like previous sessions, I don't know, maybe they hadn't come out yet. Like I was saying, some things came out way later, some things never came out. So
Mm.
yeah, it was, I guess we probably thought those were the best songs from the session before, and maybe we thought we could play them better or get a better recording or whatever we were thinking. He put up the offer, and
Oh,
we
sorry,
we
could you
did
could
it,
you who put up the offer? Sorry, you cut out right there.
I think the guy's name was Todd from Clearview Records, and so yeah, we agreed to do it. I want to say he must have given us some money to record, but back then our recording situation was really cheap, so we might have just uh paid for it. I can't remember the specifics.
Mm-mm-mm. Um, was it expensive record to do, or like in terms of because we live in this modern age and everything is kind of like, it's pretty much free to record, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
so um like, was it like $1,000+ would you say, or like no, lower?
No, it was probably closer to like $300,
Oh, okay,
maybe
not bad at all.
maximum. I would say. Yeah, because our friend Bart had a studio in Palo Alto, Bart Thurber.
Mm,
Um, my previous band, Sheep Squeeze, I recorded all the Plutocracy stuff was recorded by Bart. So me and Max already had a relationship with him.
mm,
Chris knew of him, but I don't think had recorded with him yet, and so was excited to go there. He was kind of like the affordable guy for local bands to record demos back then.
mm, mm,
And it was like a 16 track 1 inch analog studio, or yeah. And yeah, he recorded a lot of stuff there, man. Neurosis recorded there.
mm, mm,
um Trying to think, that might be the biggest band that recorded there, like the pre-Donna's bands recorded with him.
mm, mm, mm.
Yeah, so yeah, pretty reasonable. We
Is
didn't have
that
any money, man.
is that place still around, or still running?
No, that, well, he is still recording, but not in that location.
Mm,
He moved to Oakland, and he's still recording and still under House of Faith. An interesting story about his move to Oakland is that uh, I guess the building was sold or something happened with the building. That whole area has been demolished, and now there's like a giant hospital there.
mm, mm,
Um, but when he left that building, he was doing mobile recording for a while, where he would drive out to your rehearsal spot or your house and he would set up and record you there.
oh, wow.
We didn't have a place to record because we actually used the House of Faith live room as a practice studio.
Mm,
So
mm,
we would practice at that studio about once a week while he was mixing bands in a different room.
mm,
Um, we had a really good relationship with Bart, still do. But when we wanted to record La Revancha, Sound Pollution had, told us they'd like to put out an album, and we had been writing stuff, and we wanted Bart to record it. And when we approached him, he said, "Well, I know the studio in Oakland that we could do it at, but you're gonna have to pay for me and you're going to have to pay for the studio. We were like, oh shit, how much is that going to be? And it was still really reasonable. Sound pollution, gave us money to pay for it. And that's where Bart still is today. So I don't know if that was the first time he recorded there, but it was an early recording at where he's at now. And he's been there for what? I mean, shit, man, like 30 years or something.
Mm.
Longer.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, that'd be before or late 80s, right? So,
No, it was like 90s.
oh, so
I
he
think
he he start he started
nine.
that location in like early 90s or
No, he started, yeah, in Oakland. He was in Palo Alto in the late 80s. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
uh so all the records now I believe are under 65 thrash, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so
except for the compilations.
mm, mm. Um so was that like a later like you guys later purchased the stuff, or was it like that kind of thing, or did they just give it to you guys, or?
No, we retained the rights to everything.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, back then it was kind of like homie handshake kind of thing. No one's ever really told us they own the masters. We have all the master tapes, master dats,
Mm.
everything. Uh, um, so
That's
yeah,
that's so
sound.
unique.
Yeah, so sound pollution folded,
Mm.
and Clearview is no more, I don't believe. Um, and then Slap a Ham put out the last one, and he doesn't do that anymore. So yeah, Max just decided he wanted to reissue everything.
Mm, mm. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you guys did now have some of your records. Um, but
Something I'll say something we were concerned about was bootleggers,
mm,
because we would actually get like letters from people, saying if you don't, you should put this back in print, and if you don't, like, I'm gonna bootleg it or some, it's just
mm,
weird shit. Um, and yeah, and also we didn't want the record. A lot of the 7 inches were going for a lot of money, and
yeah,
we didn't want it to be. We didn't keep. So when we pressed the records and the numbers that we did originally in the 90s, that wasn't to keep it limited, man. That was just like what people could afford. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So we weren't trying to make it hard to find. And so, that still carries on, like Max wanted to keep the stuff in print so kids could get it. Uh, and that's kind of what we did. And it actually, I think, worked out for us because there's a lot of people listening to stuff still.
how would you guys write a song together, or would you even write together, or was it like individual?
So early, we would come with complete songs. So like maybe like the first two recording sessions, they were all kind of, me and Max would write some stuff together because the first 7 inch, me and Max wrote together, the two of us.
Mm,
Um, excuse me. And Chris played on it. We'd already written it, had the recording date booked, and then Chris joined the band kind of last minute.
mm,
Um, and then the second session, we kind of did the same thing. It was like we came with our own songs. We may have had a couple collaboration songs, but after that, we realized that like the collaboration songs were way more interesting and way more fun to write,
mm,
you know? And then at that point, pretty much every song was a collaboration to some extent. Maybe somebody had like 75% of the riffs themselves, but the arrangement was the band putting it together, you know, all together. And maybe like somebody be like, oh, I got this riff that goes, would fit right here. What if we did this? And Max wrote riffs too. So
mm.
we all kind of put stuff together. So like La Revancha is a great example of like total collaborating like across the board on that one.
Mm-mm. So did Max play guitar?
No, he played drums, but he would, be like, I got a riff, man. And he'd get up from the drums and he'd be all sweaty. And like, I'd be like, oh, man, get my guitar all sweaty, and he'd like show us a riff. And,
Mm.
uh, and yeah, then we'd be like, all right, we'll use this. And, uh,
So like
yeah,
he um yeah. So he wasn't a guitarist, but he like had some proficiency. What?
I think he could hear the riff in his head, like the chord changes, and
Oh,
then
okay.
he like try to make it happen.
Wow, that's so interesting. So I guess where did the lyrics, I guess, come from, like the inspiration for those lyrics, because they're very strange. Like if you read them back, I mean, when I read them,
Yeah.
for the first time, I was like, these are bizarre lyrics, but uh, uh,
Yeah, it's lots of inside jokes.
mm,
I mean, we're goofy ass fools, man. We'd be joking around at our jams, and somebody would like mishear something somebody said and be like, "What'd you say this?" And then I'd be like, "Oh man, that'd be a great song title if we called it that." And a lot of the when we'd be writing the music, we would come up with these weird song titles, to
mm,
just identify the song. And the lyrics were all written really kind of after the fact. Uh, we say we wrote them the night before recording, and that's pretty much, we'd split up all the songs and it'd be like, oh, okay, you write these lyrics, you write these lyrics, you write these. And then we'd show up at the studio session and none of us had read any of the lyrics at that point. So when we're singing them on the records, it's the first time we're singing them.
mm,
So
mm,
it's kind of unique thing where when we would play the songs live, we would have to learn
mm.
it
Wow.
because we had been playing the song without lyrics. And then also on the records, Max sings, right? But he doesn't sing live. So then
Yeah.
me and Chris would have to re-divvy up the lyrics to cover all of Max's parts.
Mm,
So it's not like we could like get ready, for a show by listening to our songs to remember the lyrics because you wouldn't know where you were singing,
mm,
you
mm.
know? It was tough. So when, we would do a tour and people would be like, play this song. And we'd be like, we can't. They'd be like, yeah, you can. And we're like, no, we can't. we literally can't play the song. Unless you can sing all the lyrics, we can maybe figure it out. But no, we got to keep moving, man. Like, so I think out of all the songs we wrote, we had like this rotation of maybe, I don't know, 75 songs, 60 songs or something that we would like switch up on set lists and stuff like that we knew. Maybe even less than that, maybe like 50 songs that we had down that we could just, create a set list of like 25 songs out of or something.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, because it for me, it like brings up this memory I had of me and my cousin, because my cousin introduced me to Spaz, and all the other bands you mentioned, and pretty much. And I remember we had this like one experience, like we listened to The Box, right, the song The Box, and we were like, wow, that song's like so intense. And then we read the lyrics and like, this is just about pizza, like.
Yeah, it's about ordering pizza. Well, and that was kind of the thing, because at the time, like, uh, the bands that were playing heavy stuff, right? Fast, heavy stuff. There wasn't much diversity in the lyrical content,
Mm,
It was either like war is bad, war atrocities,
yeah.
fucking the nukes and the polita, and or it was like gore shit, you know? So, and we didn't want to do any of that. I mean, Max is super smart with politics, and you read plutocracy lyrics, and they're very politically motivated lyrics. But with this band, we were like, yeah, we don't want to pretend to be something we're not, and we realized we're a bunch of goofballs. We didn't want to make uh silly music necessarily, but to be honest, I was pitching like, well, why don't we just do it instrumental?
Mm.
It sounds great without vocals. And they were like, nah, nobody's gonna, it's gotta have vocals. Oh shit,
Mm.
I did I lose you there?
For a second, but yeah, I think I
Are
heard
we
most
good?
of it though.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
good.
so that was kind of where it came from. And then we just kind of, we just went with it, man. And it got really warped and weird, and the more time we spent with each other, the more inside jokes, and we had all these crazy friends, and people would suggest song titles to, oh, that would make a great Spaz song title. Like that was something a lot of our friends would tell us and be like, oh shit, yeah, like there's that Big Ed's Super Saucer Sacrifice song.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's all about going and getting ice cream with our friend Neil.
Mm.
And there was these things called Big Ed's Super Saucers, and they were just like giant ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
Very wholesome.
Very wholesome, very relatable, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so what introduced you to this like way of playing, like this intense way of playing?
um,
Was it just listening to
list.
those bands, or sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm not a very accomplished guitar player. You know what I mean? I'm pretty much self-taught, and then I kind of went on my own bastardized way of how I played. But totally fell in love with that early grindcore stuff. Like Napalm and Terrorizer, Extreme Noise Terror, all that stuff. I was listening to something the other day. I think it was a Napalm Death song, and the minute I heard the guitar tone, I was like, "Oh yeah, that was like the tone I was trying to emulate, back
mm,
then." So it was just kind of my attempt at it, I guess. I always had like the worst equipment, because I was the youngest guy in the band. I was in high school, right? So I
mm.
had a paper route. I
Oh,
literally like delivered newspapers on my bicycle. So I had no money for equipment when the band started, and I just kind of played with what I had, and slowly kind of got some better stuff. But even then, it was all secondhand, kind of beat up weird stuff. Um, I was a little, I was a little. I wished I had better stuff, more money back then. But kind of looking back now, I realized that it created a really unique sound,
oh,
And
definitely.
if I had a Les Paul and a fucking Marshall, it would sound totally different, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, totally. I mean, as a guitar player, I know you see this keyboard here, but I'm a guitarist, and um, yeah, I mean, I tried emulating those your guitar sound on, Loach and things like that. I mean, I just love that. It was, such a deep and low end sound. Um,
yeah, a sound that I really, really liked when I was younger was that SOD album, Speak English or Die.
mm, mm,
I think the guitar tones on that album are just insane. And years and years later, I read the Dan Lilker book, and he talks about how they got that sound, which I
mm,
was always like, how do they do that? And they played fucking full stacks in the studio
mm.
at the
Wow.
level that they would play at a show. And that's why it sounds like that. It's like, fuck, man, it's genius. You know, like I wish I would have known that. But, we're in the studio, and Bart's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's loud enough. We don't want it too loud. Another thing, since you're like an audio guy, we always recorded all in the same room
Mm.
live. So no separation, no baffles, nothing. Just all in the same room. So there's bleed. We couldn't like overdub a guitar part if I screwed up. If somebody screwed up, we did it again. And we
Mm.
did that the whole way through. And as the band progressed, I guess we got better playing together or whatever. Bart would always kind of be like, "Hey, where the set Max up? I got drum room now. What if I put Max in?" And they were like, "Nah, can't do it." We all got to play in the same room.
Mm. Yeah, so it became like a
That's part of the sound.
yeah, no, keep on going, yeah.
It's part of the sound. Yeah,
Mm.
it's part of the sound. Just that bleed and the craziness. It wouldn't sound the same if we would have all been playing in separate rooms and we're fixing all the guitar parts. And all that stuff was recorded analog. We
Mm.
didn't do any digital recording with Spaz. It wasn't really a thing that we could afford at the time.
Right, right. So even you would you even play in the same room like for the last one Crush Kill Destroy? That one?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
'Cause that one sounds it's like, uh mixing wise, I mean it's a very like it's much cleaner mix than the other records. So it's
yeah,
like I thought you guys like
yeah.
played in
My
so
my buddy Chris would always refer to that as our pop punk record. He's like, it's so clean and the songs are so catchy.
That's so funny. So would he was he your guys' engineer for like everything you did or
Most of it we did. So when his studio closed and he was doing the mobile recording and we didn't have a space, we found out about a guy named Tom who had a studio called Trainwreck in a town called Mountain View, and we recorded a few things with Tom. Maybe like 2 or 3 sessions. I know like the split with Toast
Hmm.
was recorded by him. He recorded a lot of the Newthgrush stuff and Agents of Satan and No Less,
Hmm.
like Mohinder, a lot of the South Bay, like San Jose, Cupertino bands recorded with him. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, we did maybe like 2 sessions with him. Tom was great. And Tom was a trip though, because he was like he had a 2-inch machine, but
Yeah,
he
yeah.
had like not much separation, and his board wasn't really all that great, so it was kind of noisy. And I remember the other guys in the band, I think, kind of thought it was a little too noisy and chaotic, and I was like, oh man, this is perfect. You know, um, I felt like we were kind of progressing to just the songs were getting crazier and his recording was crazier, and yeah, I thought it just kind of fit us at the time.
Hmm. Yeah, so that, I mean that's so interesting because like I mean one of the things that's interesting about that I think is so you seem to be like I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess, but you seem to be like the one with like uh the like aesthetical expertise, I guess, in the group or
I don't know. I don't know. I think we all kind of had our own opinions. I
mm,
mean, I do remember a mixing session where we'd been mixing it for a while and I thought it was going good. And I kind of would let Bart take control. Um, and I remember Chris was like, you know what? I think we should try something totally different. And we spent all this time like kind of redoing the whole board and stuff. And
mm.
and then once like, we had it up, we were listening to some tunes, it was like, nah, Bart had it right. Let's go back to where we were. There's no automation back then, so that was like probably a couple hours tacked on to the session. But I think I definitely had a heavy hand in the graphics part of it. Um, and yeah, we all listened to each other, but I think we were all kind of on the same wavelength. We never really had any like arguments about the sound
Mm,
or the artwork or anything like that. Maybe one of us would get overruled by two of them that, no, let's not use this photo, let's use this photo, or you know what I mean? But it was pretty much equal, like all the way around. Everybody had input.
mm,
Um, I've also the unique thing about Spaz is it was a band of leaders. Like everybody who was in that band was a leader from another band,
mm,
right? So like Max was the leader in Plutocracy, and I was kind of the leader in Cheap Squeeze, or at least the dad of the band that would like get the guys together to practice and communicate. You know what I mean?
mm,
Um, so it was really easy to do shit with Spaz because we were all so motivated. We didn't have like a guy who was like, "Where is he? He's not responding," and like showing
mm,
up at the jam and he's drunk, or you know what I mean. We didn't have any of that. It was like, and there was other local bands that we were friends with, and some of them were kind of jealous or frustrated that we were getting gigs and records. And it's like, yeah, but we're all pen paling, tape trading with people around the world like constantly. You
yeah,
got like one guy who kind of does that in your band. We got like three dudes who do it full time, you know? So yeah, we're gonna have more connections. It was just a really unique. I've never been in a band really like that since then. Um, yeah, it was just a unique group of dudes, man.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so like, um, so all three of you just have this kind of deep understanding from, sounds like from the start of like what this band should be, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had an idea, but I think the thing is, we all just had like the drive to move it forward. It was Chris's idea to put that first 7-inch out. Max and I initially wanted to do it as a demo tape,
Mm,
and Chris was listening to the recording at home, and he had his label and he had some money, and he was like, "What if I just put this out as a 7-inch?" And we're like, "Ah, man, really? Like, nah, like, because I'm just like this compared to crossed out. Like,
mm,
come on, man, like, are you serious?" And he was like, "No, no, I want to do it." So we're like, "All right, go for it, do it."
mm.
But once that happened, and our music's out there, and people are writing to us, I mean, it was just like going like it went like gangbusters after that.
Mm, so like with since we mentioned the last album, Crush Kill Destroy, um was that a different experience from the previous ones because it just sounds kind of different. Yeah.
Well, because the band had kind of already ended.
Mm,
So yeah, that's a unique record. It definitely sounds different because after our tour, so we did a full US tour in 1997.
mm,
And when we got back, we were kind of burnt out on the band and probably each other.
mm,
So we took a while before we kind of got back together. I think at some point we started meeting up. I can't remember if we still had our rehearsal space and all of our gear was there, probably. Um, and we met up for some reason. I don't know, maybe like we had to exchange copies of records, and we're like, "Hey, let's jam, run through the set or whatever." And some of us had like some new songs that we had wanted to work on. So I think we started kind of working on some stuff, and then life kind of got in the way. People were doing other projects and stuff, and then we got asked to go to Japan in 1998.
mm,
And we were playing shows occasionally, if like a friend's band came through, like if Mel Banana came through the Bay Area, we would play with them. So we weren't like as active as we were before the tour, the US tour. And then we did the Japanese tour, and that was really good. We came back really excited, and I think we maybe wrote some stuff. And
Mm,
then I can't remember how it came about that we were going to do that. Chris wanted to do like an album, but yeah, it was kind of like we had a small batch of things we had kind of been working on, and then once we decided to do the album, we wrote a bunch of stuff pretty fast, but we hadn't been hanging out as much as we had previously, where like La Revancha, I was hanging out with Max every day,
mm,
right? And so constantly talking about Spaz related stuff, or every part of our hanging out time would create a Spaz song title or a reference, or he'd play me some new, oh man, check out this record. And I'd be like, oh shit. And I'd go home and I'd write a riff, you know? Where, you know, when we did Crush, Kill, Destroy, we weren't really at that point with our like individual relationships.
mm,
Max had moved to San Francisco. He didn't live in Redwood City anymore. And, you know, just things were different. You know, I was doing a lot more hip hop stuff at the time. And yeah, like we put that thing together, and yeah, it's just it's a very different sounding record because of that, you know, because the band was kind of not really uh firing on as many cylinders as it was, you know, a few years before.
mm, mm. Um, so, I guess with that, like, how'd you become a DJ? How'd you become interested in that stuff?
Um, so like the first music I heard hip hop early, you know, in the 80s. And it was kind of like with punk, but I had heard it before punk. Uh Similar thing where you're just kind of like, man, I think I could maybe do this. You know, I think I could maybe write a rap. I had no idea about making beats, but I
Mm,
was very much into the beats, and I was trying to write some raps. I was just goofing off, you know. I wasn't like serious about it. Um, and then I discovered, you know, punk, and then and I kind of gravitated more towards that. I was a big skateboarder, so I kind of look at it as like, looking back on my life, I wouldn't say like I was a punk rocker back then, or you know, I wasn't a punk necessarily. I didn't have crazy hair. I didn't wear, you know, bondage pants or anything. I was a skateboarder, man. And skateboarders listened to like pretty much everything, you know, back then. So uh yeah, I discovered punk and I kind of got deeper into that. I was reading Thrasher magazine, checking out, you know, Pusshead's column, all the other bands that were being featured. So, you know, you might get an issue and it's got, you know, Beastie Boys on one page, and then you flip the page and it's the Cro-Mags, you know, and or, you know, Beyond Possession, or I don't know, Attitude Adjustment or somebody.
mm,
So it just seemed like it was kind of all the same to me. And I had a friend who so I was always into hip hop, but just not really like following it super closely. People would play me stuff and I'd be like, oh shit, that's, you know, I like that. And I'd go buy the Ghetto Boys album. Or, you know, my friend played me the Mac Dre album that he recorded from, or the EP that he recorded from prison. And I was like, what? This is insane, you know? So it's like those kind of things I would, to me, it was like thrash metal or hardcore, you know, it was so intense, freaking out the establishment, you know,
mm.
which really, if yeah, I was in, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, you know, here and there, I remember, you know, I'd meet cats at school and they'd be like, oh, yo, have you heard NWA? No, what's that? You know, and they play it for, oh shit, you know. Um, but then later I had a friend that I used to skate with, and he was just like buying hip hop tapes all the time, you know,
Mm, mm,
playing me a lot of stuff. And one day I went over to his house, and he had set up like his mom's turntable, and I think like got a turntable from his dad or his stepmom or something, and he had kind of like he was trying to scratch, and I was
Mm.
like, well, that's crazy, you know. But before, I wouldn't do that with my turntable because like, man, I don't want to break it because I want to be able to listen to my records. And he was like, you know, fuck it, scratch, you know. So I was like, oh man, that's insane. So I hit some thrift stores. You know, back then you could find a turntable for like $5 or something. And so I bought a couple
Mm.
turntables at the thrift store. I got this cheap mixer and I started messing around at home. And then I just started kind of buying records. And I realized because I was a big record collector, I love buying records.
Mm.
And I realized it's like, oh, wow, all these records I buy, like I can use them as tools for this other thing. So my my record purchasing style kind of like changed. I started buying like only rap records. Really, I stopped buying hardcore records.
Mm.
And I know at that, you know, I got pretty deep into it, and the dudes in the band were like, "You don't even like listen to hardcore anymore," you know. And I was like, "Yeah, but isn't that good? Because then we're not going to sound like any other band, you know, because I'm not going to be like influenced by any new thing that you guys are listening to, you know."
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just kind of took off from there. You know, just started buying equipment and figuring it out. You know, this is before YouTube, man. You know, and I didn't really have like a mentor, so it was a tough learning curve. But you know, I was just fell in love with it, man, and still to this day. I mean, I got
Mm.
turntable over here, and you know, mixer, and I got all my stuffs over,
Mm.
so um yeah. Also, uh, um when you're playing in a band with people, after a while you're kind of like, man, like my idea wasn't uh uh it wasn't put into motion in the song the way I envisioned it. And when you're like making beats or DJing or doing anything like that, it's like a very solo thing, and it's all you. And so I found, that being a great escape from playing in a band. So it was like kind of like something totally different to be making music and be excited, but like totally by myself with nobody telling me, oh, don't do that, you should do this, 100% me.
Mm. 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 Um, when did because I recently heard Dank Goblins and I loved it. I thought it was great. Um,
Thanks.
yeah, yeah. So when or so how like uh was that conceived, I guess? Like was there multiple, because it's kind of hard to tell like if there's multiple people or you know what I mean?
Yeah, so that is actually four people.
Mm.
So uh Andreas from God's America,
Mm.
that's his current band. He's in Vegas. He's just an amazing multi-instrumentalist, but he uh plays drums
Mm.
really well. And I can't remember how it came about, but me and him did a project called Drayonism. It's on Bandcamp. I
Mm.
did a limited CD version of it years ago, but that was him sending me a bunch of drum tracks, and I took them, chopped them up, put samples on top, and then made beats out of them. And it was just a fun little project to do, something different to test myself, And yeah, we both really liked it. And so then I was hit up by a friend who was going to put out the Healer, the band Healer from the Bay Area. He was going to put out their demo on a 7-inch. And he hit me up and he was like, hey, man, I'm putting out the Healer demo, but it's like 4 minutes long. And I don't want to do a single sided 7-inch. Like, can you send me some beats to throw on the other side?
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, man, I could do that. And I started kind of thinking about it, and I was like, man, this healer demo is really sick though. Like, I don't just want to give you some just like beats. Like, I want to make something for this. So I hit up Andreas again, and I was like, hey man, could you send me some beats? I got this idea.
Mm.
And so he sent me some beats, and I started chopping them up. And then I hit up my buddy Frank, from Plutocracy, and me and him did a project called Deny the Cross. We did an
Mm.
album. He's a bass player, and I was like, hey, do you want to? Will you play bass on this? Um, and he was like, yeah, but how do I do it? So I kind of taught him how to, okay, I'm going to email you the track with some clicks in front of it, and when you record it, like, leave the clicks in, and then I'll be able to line it up in my Pro Tools, because he had like some little digital 4 track. So I kind of taught him how to do that, and then he sent me the bass tracks back. And then my friend Luke, I hit him up and said, could you give me some like noise kind of interludes or some weird noise? He has all this noise equipment. Luke is also my partner in my rap group, Grand Invincible. He's the MC,
Mm.
but he's also, we've done some experimental stuff together too. So I was like, man, give me some noises to throw in this mix. I kind of was like, I want this to be a bunch of homies on the other side of this record with the little homies. So yeah, so that ended up being the first Dank Goblins project. And then people really liked it, man. Actually, the first song on that record ended up in the Baker Skateboards video
Mm.
uh, last year for the Skater of the Year, Jamie Foy's part. And we're just
Oh, that's awesome.
like, holy shit. But people really liked it. And I guess I want to say Jensen from Iron Lung Records reached out and was like, hey man, could you do a whole album of this? And I was like, fuck. Okay. So I talked to the dudes, they were down. And then COVID hit.
Mm.
So everybody was home. So it was kind of perfect, right? So we did it all through the email, and it was going really good. It kind of hit a stall, and it was all on me. My dad was dying and all this shit,
Mm.
it kind of stopped, and it kind of became this thing like the albatross. Like, man, I
Mm.
gotta finish this freaking record, um and I finally did, but it took me way longer than it should have, but just life got in the way, you know what I mean?
No,
And
yeah.
yeah, unfortunately it took about a year to come out after we wrapped it up, got it mastered, got all the artwork done. And, interesting thing about this record though, I gotta add this because I always tell people, when you start working on an album, start working on the artwork.
Mm.
You should be working on the artwork in tandem with the music, because you don't want to end up in the situation where you have this album recorded, it's ready to go, and you don't know what the fuck you're gonna do with the art,
Mm.
and no one can agree, right? So I hit up my buddy Defy, who actually drew the cover to Crush Kill Destroy, both versions, because there's
Mm.
2 versions, and he drew the cover like quick style, man. And he kept like, what's up with this album? Are you guys still gonna do it? So I was sitting on his cover for a long time, and that's like
Mm.
the first time I think that's ever happened with me. But yeah, got Defy on the cover. Yeah, once again, try to get all the homies involved. Bart Thurber mixed that.
Mm.
So that was my first experience with sending something that I recorded at home. Well, I guess we all recorded at home to Bart to mix. So that was fun. And I told him, go wild. And he went crazy. A lot of the unique sounds were Bart, like really kind of listening to what we had done and kind of pushing it to a different level.
Mm. Mm.
Um, But yeah, I just
It's
kind of wanted it to be a friendly thing, you know.
yeah, yeah. It's such a good sounding record. It sounds so integrated. Every all the instruments. Yeah.
Thanks,
Uh,
man. My only regret really is that I wish we had maybe done another song. I think there was a song in the works, but it never fully came together. And it at the point when I like went back to it, we had it so much time had passed from when we had done all the other tracks that I was like, you know what? I think it's gonna sound different. We just let's go with what we have, you know.
yeah. So are you guys gonna continue that project or?
So I got some more drum tracks maybe like 2 years ago. I
Mm.
started working on a track, and then shit always comes up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
man.
I get you.
But I would love to. I mean, we're all still in touch. Everybody's still doing stuff. It's kind of all on me, because I have to assemble the drums and kind of lock in the timing of everything, and then I can send it to everybody and they can add stuff.
Mm.
But I'm already in the midst of a few different things right now. So if we do go back to it, I actually pulled it up on my sampler the other day and I was like, yeah, it's, I could hear something here. The one track I was putting together. So maybe, I don't know if we do another album, maybe we do like an EP,
Mm.
maybe like a digital release or something, or a 7-inch single or something, a cassette or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that'd be cool. Um, so, real quick, I want to circle back to Spaz.
Yeah.
So, how did the name come about?
Well, so it was like spur of the moment, man. We were originally calling the band Gash,
Mm.
but Chris and Max didn't like it because of the other connotation, right? And there was like a band, some old band that nobody remembers now, called that back in the '80s or whatever. So we're in the studio and we're like, well, we haven't decided on a name, but Bart's like, I need to write a name on the reel. Come up with a name. So one of us, I think Chris came up with Spasm.
Mm.
And at the time, there was a death metal band called Spasm, but they had like a demo. But at the time, the demo was kind of popping in all the fanzines and like everybody was talking about. I was like, well, there's already this band. You know, have you ever heard of them? No. You know what I mean? Like they're not spoken of now. But Chris was like, well, what about Spaz? And we're like, all right, that works for now. Just write it on the thing. And that was it, man.
Mm.
I
Mm.
think the key thing with Spaz that like looking back now is go with your gut, with the
Yeah.
lyrics, with the writing songs as a group, with the freaking band name. You know what I mean? It was just like, nah, just go with it, man. Don't think about it too much. Just go with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm. So like as far as structuring a song with Spaz, uh was that more like riff based or was it like come up with lyrics first, then riff, or is it like you're talking about
No
like
lyrics first.
no lyrics first? Mm.
Yeah. No, it was either a drum beat or a riff.
Mm.
You know, Max would be like, I've been messing with this drum beat. And we'd be like, okay, well, what if we do this?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
we got really comfortable, and you play in a band with just three people, it's easy to kind of jam and figure stuff out. Later I would play in bands with like two guitars, and that's harder. You know what I mean? It's like you gotta be like in
Yeah.
sync with the other guitarist.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it was really easy for us to just gel, and we listen.
Maybe hold off for a sec. Okay. Sorry, could you maybe repeat that?
Yeah, so I was like the guy with like the least amount of knowledge and records in the group. So sometimes I wouldn't get a reference that those they would be talking about, and then they'd be like, "Okay, well, we'll record you the song, or I'll play you the song." And I'd be like, "Oh, okay," or you better buy that record, dude. You need that record. So I'd go find the record, be like, "Oh, okay," So I was learning on the job.
Mm. So why'd you guys, or I guess we kind of covered it, but you guys broke up because you're more so burnt out from just playing.
No, we actually broke up because Chris moved away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Chris moved down to Southern California. And we just, Spaz is the three of us. So if it's not going to be the three of us, then we're not going to do it.
Mm-mm.
So
Okay.
that was another reason to do the album. The Crush Kill Destroy. It was kind of like we knew that was going to be it. So the album came out and then we played like, well, I don't even know. Did the album come out before we played our last show? I can't remember. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, basically we recorded it and then we played like two shows and that was it. We played a radio show, we played Gilman Street, and that was it.
Mm. So I want to talk about the intros real quick too. So the intros to
Oh
the
yeah.
songs. Um, uh, was that um was that like specifically picked for like a specific song, or was that like more so like, oh, this is cool, let's just put it in with that, or
Some were for certain songs, and then some were just we would show up with all this material, and we'd be working on the mix down and be like, "Oh, I got something," and then we'd play it, and be like, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." And all that stuff was spliced in on tape.
mm, yeah.
It was, there was no on the last record I brought my MPC to the studio and I triggered a lot of the samples off the MPC.
Mm,
Um but yeah, all that stuff was like done splicing tape, man. Bart was really good at cutting the tape. I mean, especially like a funny story was we were working on a recording one time and our songs are so short, right? So
mm,
how long is a 15-second song on tape? What is it, a piece of tape like that? So he's splicing all this stuff, and he puts the tape back together and he's playing it. We're listening, we're like, where's the song? It's like the song from before and the next song. He's like, oh shit, it's on the floor somewhere. So he had to like go back through and like run it through the head, try to find the song. I think he was cursing us that day. It's like, why can't you guys write some fucking songs that aren't fucking 10 seconds long, and put like samples on both sides where I gotta cut the tape. we
yeah.
we really pushed him. I'll say
Mm.
that.
um
It wasn't easy.
mm. Yeah, so um so how would you assemble those intros? Was it like you like record it like on like a little cassette and then like bring it to the studio, or yeah.
Mostly cassette, sometimes VHS tapes.
Mm,
But yeah, cassette or VHS.
mm. So looking back, like on those hardcore bands and especially like the bands that came after you guys, um, do you do you ever listen back? Like, do you still like that kind of music, or yeah?
Oh yeah, like the stuff that hit me back then, like inspired me. The early stuff I heard, I still listen to Infest, Crossed Out,
Mm,
Napalm Death. You know, I don't follow the current scene very much, and I wouldn't say I listen to like crazy hardcore all the time. Um, I was also like big into death metal, like in the late 80s, early 90s, like death metal demo tape trading stuff. I was big into that. So that's something I still kind of collect a lot of that stuff and I listen to a lot of that.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, my taste is really diverse, man. It's kind of like the mood, like
yeah.
I feel like I listen to a lot of music. Most of the music listening I do now is driving, unfortunately. And so like the brutal shit is great for driving because, like getting stuck in Bay Area traffic, it's like you're going to
Mm.
war. So, I know I had that crossed out discography CD on repeat like a few months back. I couldn't get enough of it. Um, but
Mm.
then I'll throw on, I don't know, I'll listen to like Minnie Riperton or something, for like days. I'm kind
Yeah.
of all over the place. Um, but that's also another thing. Hip hop got me really opened my mind.
Mm.
I feel like when we were originally doing Spaz, I was really kind of closed minded to other musics. I wanted it fast and heavy and fucking yeah.
Mm.
And after a while, you kind of burn out on that. But when I started making beats, I was looking for sample sources and I had no idea what I was doing. And I would just go to thrift stores and look for interesting records and discovered so much amazing music. Um, and just like, I buy records like crazy. I still love buying used records. I still go to thrift stores. I'm always still looking for different stuff, not just to make beats, but to listen to, maybe to sell or trade. But yeah, I love records, man.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's all CDs back there, but on the sides, it's all records. And yeah, so when the mood strikes, I'll throw on Infest, or I'll throw on King Tubby, or I'll throw on John Coltrane.
Right, right. Yeah, that's cool to hear because a lot of like especially like my uncles, um some of them uh grew up listening to hardcore music, but and then like now they're like, well, I'm a father now. I don't like, listen to that stuff and whatever, and so it's cool to hear that you're, still open-minded, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think now I've sold a lot of my old hardcore records. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I still
Mm.
have a pretty nice collection, but a lot of stuff I'd go back to and it just wouldn't really hit me.
Mm.
It's not hitting. And I think, there's like the crucial stuff, like foundational records in my learning about all that, and they still resonate with me. Where other things that were maybe recommended to me that were kind of on the periphery of it, like now I go back and I'm like, yeah, I don't see myself. I think it's also an age thing. As I get older, I'm like, how many times am I really going to listen to this? I got thousands of records in this house, you know like if I put on a record and I don't enjoy it, why do I have it?
Mm.
I should sell it to buy something that I will enjoy. Taste change
Yeah,
you
yeah, of
know
course, yeah.
but that's the joy of records, I think, is that there's especially now, there's a really healthy secondary market for it. I do record swaps around the area,
Mm.
and I'll go and I'll make money. I'll spend some money, and I'll learn about some stuff. And when I get tired of this, or I also DJing. Um, I'm not DJing as much as I used to, so I'm kind of also looking at stuff I bought to DJ with that isn't like always in my crate or always in my couple my go-to jams. Like, do I really need to hold on to these records, because I'm not spinning every week or every month like I used to.
Yeah, right, right. With my closing question, I'd like to ask you, um, um, so is there gonna be a Spaz reunion tour or is there any talks about Spaz reunion? No?
Not gonna happen.
Mm-mm.
There was a time and a place for Spaz, and it's not now.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. It's kids always hit me up. I never got to see you guys, and I mean, I'm sorry, but luckily there's a lot of video footage. But uh if we did it now, it just wouldn't be the same, man. you
Mm.
know and some of these reunions are a little awkward to see, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I want the legacy to remain the way it is. You know, I look at Crossed Out, for example, perfect band. They
Right.
got in, they got out, those records, perfect, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely true. Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, people ask us to do collaborations of different things. And, you know, we just really want to make the music available to people, uh, shirts, you know, to, but beyond that, you know, I feel like that's enough. There's a lot of bands from our era that are, you know, I'm not going to name any names, but um, people would like that from them, and for whatever reason, they're not doing that. So I feel like, you know, we're not going to reunite, but at least you can still buy the records, you know, new at a reasonable price, and you can get an officially licensed shirt, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what we got for you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I gotta say it was such a pleasure talking to you, Dan, and thank you for all the music that you produced. It's
Well, thanks for having me on, man. Thanks for doing this, man. It was a really nice conversation.
thank you. Yeah, real pleasure. I just want to thank you for watching the podcast. It was very exciting to have Dan Lactose on. Um, sorry, he had some internet connection issues, so we had to deal with that during the podcast. I'll be putting links in the description, um, so you guys can take a look at what he's doing creatively, and also link his Instagram and X profile. Um, so please subscribe and like the video.